I'm putting that in there.
Cool.
Just so you know.
Hello and welcome to A Tribe Called Cars. My name is Ben Griffin and today we're driving the Mini Electric. Yes, the German interpretation of the British classic has lost its traditional combustion engine, though not for the first time if you include the Mini E from 2008 and the Hybrid Countryman from some time. Now, as the name suggests, this is obviously the fully electric version of the new Mini, which means it has a battery under the car which powers an electric motor, and that turns the wheels. Apart from that, it's just the 3-door hatch with some minor tweaks, such as a closed grille because there's nothing to cool anymore, and it improves aerodynamics. And in an electric car, that means more range, which is the dream. Obviously, one of the most important things to know about this car is the range, and that is 145 miles from a 32.6 kilowatt hour battery. That means you have pretty much half of what you get in the new Kia Soul EV and the Kia e-Niro, which shares pretty much the same electric powertrain. That's also less than the Renault Zoe, BMW i3, Honda E, ID3, Nissan Leaf, MG ZS EV, VW eGolf, and Tesla Model 3, to name a few. But you know, it's not as bad as the what's it called? Renault Twizy. There we go, got it. But realistically, most people only drive a short-ish range in a day. It's just more problematic if you're going further afield. Also, a benefit of a smaller battery is that it takes less time to charge. 12 hours with a normal plug, not that you'd ever do that unless you're deranged, or 3 hours and 12 minutes with a wall box that you have to pay extra for. Or if you can find one of those fancy, sexy 50 kilowatt rapid chargers, then it's a mere 36 minutes. Just enough time that you can drain your entire life savings at a motorway service station. When you're out and about, you can find a charger using the Mini Connected app, which does a lot of other cool things such as pre-warming the car in the winter, but not finding a vaccine for coronavirus. More conveniently, you can use the sat-nav system within the car that's standard on all models. As for a battery warranty, the Mini comes with 8 years or 100,000 miles, whichever you reach sooner. That's pretty competitive. There's also no battery lease to worry about, as you get with some electric cars, which will help when it comes to selling it on. Now, the immediate impressions of this car is that it still retains that likeable go-kart feeling. It still has pretty fast steering. It does err on the side of being a little too firm, so you do feel most of the bumps through the cabin, and you can certainly hear them. But on the flip side, that does mean it's quite an energetic drive. It is quite fun, and when you combine it with the 270 Newton meters of torque, it really is even more zippy than perhaps even the John Cooper Works version. And the numbers don't lie. With that much torque, you do get a very fast 0 to 62 time of 7.3 seconds. So if you're at the lights, you want to leave someone behind, most cars are really not going to keep up. Now, for some reason on the spec sheet, there is actually a 0 to 37 time. No idea why you would ever need that, but it is in 3.9 seconds, and that does emphasize just how much instant power you get when you put your foot down. To put that into perspective, the VW e-Up needs 11.3 seconds to go from standing to 62. There are other benefits of the lithium-ion battery as well, such as improving the center of gravity and the weight balance. Both are good for driving like you stole it. And the handling is pretty decent in this. It's a very chuckable little car. Yes, fine, it's heavier and therefore it's going to be a little less forgiving on the edge, but we're still throwing it around these bends and it's gripping hard. They're actually quite wide profile tyres. Weirdly enough though, one of the negatives of this car is that the suspension is the same as it is in the non-electrified version. And this being heavier means it actually has sort of emphasized the poorer ride quality elements. In fact, it's 145 kilograms heavier than a Mini Cooper S automatic at a total of 1,365. That's a lot for a Super Mini, yes, but only about as heavy as the average Brit when we eventually get out of lockdown. It's by no means a deal breaker, but it certainly isn't the most comfortable Mini that you can buy. Nor is it the most practical. The Mini Electric is 3-door only compared with the Zoe's 5 doors. It's also got a small boot at 211 litres compared to the Zoe's 335, but it owns the Honda E's 151 litres. Also, some interior space has been lost in the electrification process, and there are only 4 seats, which apparently is a way to make passing road compliance tests easier, but kind of annoying for everyone else. Are you filming me? Oh, for God's sake.
No, I was looking at my phone and turned left and I went, ah!
In terms of price, when you compare this car with its competitors, it is a little harder to justify. So you have the Honda E, which is around about the same size, has the very cool interior, but is quite limited in range. But it's also the same price as things that will do well over 250 miles quite happily. And in fact, you're not really that far off a very poverty spec Tesla Model 3. However, this car has something about it that's just a little bit more interesting. It does feel very solidly built. It is particularly fun to drive. And of course you have the classic Mini aesthetic. You've got everything round in here. The infotainment display, yes, fine. It's like they put a letterbox in the middle of a circle and it's a bit weird for the map itself. But in terms of other infotainment stuff, it's generally nice to look at, easy to use. It has BMW's iDrive controller system down here. So once you're kind of used to it and you know where the buttons are, it is pretty intuitive and doesn't take your attention away. And it has a round steering wheel, according to Phil Huff of Calibre and Front Seat Driver. Go check him out. You didn't see the wing, but obviously that's going to get people to go. I have to say, the interior is a big reason why you'd consider the Mini Electric or any Mini. I love the airplane style overhead switches that you also get in a McLaren Senna. I love that it's comfortable and has loads of headroom, even with the wonderful, from a filming perspective anyway, panoramic roof. I love the presentation of the digital display behind the steering wheel, which, as Phil usefully pointed out, is round. Refinement is another positive. Okay, so the tyres are quite wide. There is a little bit of noise coming from rolling resistance, but when noise is low and at 70 miles an hour earlier, it was certainly quieter, I would say, than the 2020 Kia Soul, and definitely good enough for any electric vehicle on the market. Running cost-wise, this thing is going to be pretty decent once you get past the fact that it costs £34,000. It would have been around £33,500, but the government has rolled back the amount of money you get from its plug-in grant. So this thing is going to be just a little pricier. However, because it's 0 grams of CO2, that means you're not paying anything in terms of car tax or vehicle excise duty, as it's officially known. And if you're a business user, and there might be a reason why you want a Mini and you're a business user, it's going to be 0% BIK from April, and that will rise over the next couple of years to 2%. When it comes to speccing this car, it's actually very easy, but also quite inflexible. So you have 3 levels, 1 being the most basic, and 3 being the all singing and all dancing. Unfortunately, what that means is if you want the car with the best of everything, the navigation, the Harman Kardon system, you can't have the lower spec and add that. You have to go for the level 3 or it's nothing. You do at least get navigation on the £27,900 Mini Electric level 1, as well as LED automatic headlights and fog lights, plus automatic air conditioning. Take that, quarantine summer. The level 3 car I'm in costs £33,900. For that you get the lovely sounding Harman Kardon sound system, adaptive LED headlights, head-up display, panoramic roof, parking assistant for helping you parallel park, and enhanced navigation plus that includes Apple CarPlay. But not Android Auto, I'm afraid, unlike new BMW.
It's done the energetic drive, which I liked. No, I didn't like that.
Okay.
Good word.
That's one bit. Level 2 meanwhile costs £2,000 extra, and that gives you the Mini Excitement Pack with fancy interior and exterior lighting, plus a rear parking camera and driving assistant comprised high beam assist, traffic sign memory and collision warning. That's steep when you consider a basic Mini can be had for 1.6 million pennies, or £16,000 if you prefer. But then if you recharge at home at night using off-peak electricity, you could be paying as little as 4 pence per mile and £5.31 for a full tank, charge. Fun fact, one of the two-tone 17-inch alloy wheel options is called Corona. I'm not even joking. Admittedly, I've only spent a limited time in the car, but I will say this definitely feels like one of the more exciting electric cars to drive. I like how it looks, I like how it feels. It definitely tries hard enough to justify the fact that it isn't the cheapest electric car. Of course, if you love the Mini and you can afford this thing and you want to be a little greener, then it really is a no-brainer. However, if you want the extra range, you want to be a little less anxious about that kind of thing, then you are perhaps better off looking at a slightly larger car, particularly from Kia, or maybe, if the budgets will allow, something from Tesla. But then a Mini is a Mini. A Mini's cool. If there is a good way to get people into electric cars, this has to be one of the most compelling. even with those Corona wheels. Obviously, if you're buying an electric car, the range is very important. And on this particular car, you have a 33.2 kilowatt hour.
32.6.
For fuck's sake. Now, this being an electric car, the range is very important. And you have a... Jesus Christ, Benjamin. That was beautiful, wasn't it? Did you enjoy that?
That was delightful.
Was it electric?
It was electrifying.
Wow, that's what I wanted. 32.6.
32.6.
Okay. Oh my God, Phil, can you just like shoot me? Like, oh.
No, this is good. I'm learning from the best.
Oh, shut up. It's a lot easier to be on this side. I'm sorry. Through the window. Yeah, alright, fine.